The Palmer House by Franklin, Jesse, and Julia.
The building. The Palmer House is a grand and luxurious hotel located at 17 East Monroe Street, taking up nearly the entire block with its neoclassical French ornamentation and classical revival-style architecture. This hotel has made an impact on Chicago's Loop, named after Potter Palmer, the wealthy businessman responsible for the project. First constructed with 225 rooms in 1870 by architect John Van Osdale, the hotel was to be rebuilt 3 times due to the Chicago fire in 1871 shortly after its first and second installment, and in the 1920s due to a demand for a larger hotel, which was designed by John Welborn Root, Jr. through the architectural firm Holabird and Roche. In 1925, the final construction was complete, and the 25-story hotel standing today, with only a few renovations and alterations, is that from this rebuild.
Purpose. The original purpose of the Palmer House was to be a hotel and a gift to Potter Palmer's fancy, Bertha Hilton Honore, and then his wife, Bertha Hilton Honore Palmer. Since its original opening on September 26, 1871, it is the nation's oldest hotel in continual operation. However, it only became the lively center it is after its reconstruction. Throughout its life, it hosted many presidents and the social elite of Chicago. It grew to fame in part because it held extravagant banquets in its Empire dining room, even hosting a dinner for General Ulysses S. Grant in 1879. As far as food goes, it was very tasty for the time, and served what many believe to be the first brownie, made by Bertha Palmer. In 1933, it turned its Empire dining room into a supper club, which is basically dinner theater. Many have performed there, including Frank Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald, and even Liberace for his first performance. Over the years, it has remained one of only 26 grand hotels in the country, and has been continually renovated. It received a $170 million renovation recently, and became part of the Historical Hotels of America in 2006. Currently, it keeps bees on its 25th floor rooftop garden, and uses the honey in its meals and on its brownies. Local historical context. The Palmer House was greatly impacted by the Great Chicago Fire in 1871, the second star in the city's flag. The Chicago Fire started on October 8th and blazed for 3 days, destroying the downtown and north side of the city. It struck during Chicago's growth, as its population was near 324,000 and transportation was booming. It is known to be started at the O'Leary's farm, but how or why is still debated. The fire swept through 300 people, 3.9 square miles, and $200 million and about 100,000 homes. However, the fire ended up turning the city into what it is today, inviting a plethora of new architects and the opportunity to build fire-proof skyscrapers in place of the wooden shacks that populated the downtown slums. The Palmer House was no exception to the devastation, and burned down 13 days after it was built. It was also no exception to Chicago's rebirth, as a tenacious Mr. Palmer would build the new Palmer House Hotel, bigger, better, and across the street. It was rebuilt using stone blocks and terracotta clay, and was Chicago's first fireproof hotel. When it was to be under construction, Palmer received a $1.7 million loan, and knew he would have to make an extravagant building to pay it off. Some of the new features, besides the lovely architecture, included more floors, the city's first elevator, and was the city's first hotel with phones. If it weren't for the fire, the new Palmer House that we know and love today would not have risen from the ashes like the majestic phoenix it is. Connection to the present. The building still has many connections to the city today, and takes part in some urban trends. It has been renovated to have a better view of the skyline, and the upper floors have been made with some more modern aspects, fitting in with the urban current trends of the Chicago Loop area. As mentioned earlier, they keep bees. Urban beekeeping has recently become very popular and a necessary trend, as the bee population is dying out. Also, they have a lavish, all-inclusive spa, keeping in trend with the new herbal styles of living.
The Panic of 1873. The root cause of this panic was the fact that many countries switched from silver to gold. When these countries used the gold standard instead of the silver standard, it greatly depreciated the value of silver. This was detrimental to countries that still use silver, such as the United States. On top of that, many projects were funded by greenbacks, the money issued during the Civil War. Greenbacks had no real value and were completely based off of speculation, meaning people could change the value of something based off of what they wanted. The effects of the panic were felt all across the country and all over the world. Average wages fell by nearly a quarter. The country was billions of dollars in debt, and unemployment rates were very high. One prominent pattern that can be seen all throughout American history is the rise in nativism after a recession. The people like to blame groups for their misfortune, and the Panic of 1873 is no exception. Several examples of government acts involving immigration during this period speak to the effects of the recession. The Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 banned all unskilled workers coming from China. The 1882 Immigration Act restricted European immigrants by banning categories of migrants and taxing them. The Irish were a demographic that faced major prejudice all throughout the 19th century and became an easy scapegoat. These prejudices bled into all factors of life, including myths surrounding the Great Chicago Fire. The legend of Mrs. O'Leary's cow is greatly debated, but discrediting it is logical. The O'Leary family were Irish Catholic immigrants, making them not exactly the most beloved figures in the community. It would have been very easy to pin the blame on them. One of the writers for the Chicago Tribune, Michael Ahern, admitted years later that the story was entirely made up. Although the fire can be traced to her general area, Mrs. O'Leary provided an excellent scapegoat due to her origins, and there was never any evidence pointing to her being the cause. We'll never know, I guess.
Architectural element. One somewhat architectural element of the Palmer House would be the features of electric lights, telephones, and elevators. Not only was electricity functional, but innovative, as it was the first hotel to have these elements in Chicago. Many buildings today have this element, as nearly all modern buildings do. We have electric elevators at Jones College Prep, and even smaller buildings outside the city have electricity. Another architectural element would be the decorative ceilings that depict figures from classic mythology and are very detailed. The ceilings add to the dramatic and extravagant feel of the building, while also depicting this very classical style. The images are beautiful, intricate, and cover the majority of the ceiling on the first floor. Another building that has this feature would be a church called La Maddalena Fresco, which has similar ceilings. These ceilings fit the building's classical style. Another mural on a ceiling that is similar to that in the Palmer House would be the Hypothesis of Washington, a mural on the top of the dome in the United States Capitol building. The shape of the building. The Palmer House is shaped like an uppercase E turned sideways, and the three tall columns to the building resemble wafer cookies due to their thin, long shape and many small windows. The structure is not necessarily striking from the outside, as it is in its interior, but the rectangular limestone base is visually appealing, with its niches, insets in the wall, and other lavish details. From a pedestrian's perspective of the exterior, the building appears posh and extravagant, due to the deep black marble and bronze detailing. Overall, the shape itself is not entirely impressive, looking geometric from a distance, but does have some interesting ornamentation and flashy material to impress from a closer distance. One feature I find appealing would be the intricate detailing and embellishments lining the base. I specifically find the carvings in the limestone attractive. On the other hand, a feature I do not like would be the ornamentation in bronze on the entrance. The bronze detail on the black portion of the base looks a bit tacky and overdone. I think the building would have looked more elegant with either the black without the bronze or preferably had the limestone continued all the way down the base. This detail fits the French neoclassical style of the building, which I find to be excessively decorative, but that is more of an opinion. I also find the feature of the peacocks on the old CD Peacock jewelry store very attractive and also interesting, as they create such intricate bronze detail of the peacocks just for the jewelry store. It is overall very attractive and a nice quirk to the building. Another feature I find interesting, and is very functional, would be the stores at the base of the building. These stores were relatively new to be in a hotel and brought a lot of attention and foot traffic to the hotel.
Wow factor! The Palmer House was known as the world's first fireproof building at the time of its rebuilding. The original Palmer House had burned in the Chicago fire only 13 days after its opening. When the architect, John M. Van Osdell, heard that the fire was spreading, he tried to protect the blueprints by surrounding them in the materials for terracotta. He then hid them in the basement. The fire did indeed destroy the building, but when Osdell went to recover the blueprints, they were perfectly intact. He then knew that terracotta would provide a fireproof material for the new Palmer House. They rebuilt using steel and bricks and covered it in terracotta tiles. During this time, terracotta became very commonly used on structures, and another fire was never experienced in Chicago thanks to Osdell.